Who would have thought 1 month into the NRL season, the Bulldogs would be on top of the table, the Eels and Dolphins wouldn't have a win, and we'd have plenty of different teams vying for final spots. I can't wait for round 5. What's happening, guys? It's your boy Bergs back at it again for another week of tips and predictions here on the Casual Athlete. This week it is round 5, and I can't believe we are already 1 month into the NRL season. Blink and you miss it type stuff, but we had some huge competition heavyweights go down last week. But before we get into that, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. We bring out so much content each and every week just for you guys. And make sure that you download the TBC Live app. That is where we are doing all our tipping comps this season. Join in on all the banter with us and make some big predictions yourself. Now let's have a quick look, guys, at the tips that I put in last week. And we got 5 out of 8 last week. I was pretty happy with the results. To be fair, the games that I did miss out on, I think everyone else would have tipped. Panthers probably going on name alone there with that one. I thought the Rabbitohs were no chance in that game, but Ryan To'o goes down with an injury, and clearly this side needs Nathan Cleary back into the team. He should be back for round 5, and unfortunately they're coming up against my team this week. And yeah, I just don't know what happened to the Storm out of Cogra. They couldn't get anything going against the Dragons. Yeah, it was really baffling for me. That's the second win in a row for the Dragons against the Storm, and they've done it in Melbourne, and now they've done it out of Cogra. That is no mean feat in and of itself, and to do it 2 times in less than 12 months, you definitely have to watch out for the Dragons. They could be a bit of a sleeper in this competition. The Sharks is the only other tip that I got wrong this week, guys, and they played as I said they would. They got dragged into niggly crap from the Dogs, and the Dogs were able to play their style of football. And when you allow players like Marnie and Crichton, all these guys who can really push your buttons to, get under your skin mentally, it showed. And yes, the Sharks were down on troops by the end. Iro came away with a hamstring injury, and then we had Talakai go off the field with a HIA, and we had disruptions with HIAs from Rudolph as well, and it wasn't the cleanest game from an injury standpoint for the Sharks, but I just think if they're going to be taken seriously this year, they can't be losing games like that to an understrength Dogs team. And this Sharks side, as I've said a number of times, is one of the best teams in the competition on paper. But upstairs, in the mind, where it matters most, it just didn't click for them the other night. And they really need to erase that from their mental state of mind. Otherwise, they are not going to be anywhere near close to winning a premiership this year. But guys, 5 out of 8 tips correct. I was pretty happy with that one. And the ones that I did get wrong, to be honest, I think a lot of people would have also got wrong this week. A couple of unexpected ones in there. But guys, let's move on to round 5 tips. There are some juicy games coming up this week. Okay, here we go. The first game of round 5 takes place down in Canberra, where we have the Sharks taking on the Raiders. Now, the Sharks actually have the wood on Canberra, especially over the last 3 games. And the last outing that they had down in Canberra, they put on 40 points. And this Sharks side, though, both of these teams coming off a loss. But I'll talk about the Sharks first. They got dragged into playing a different kind of football last weekend. The Dogs really got under their skin, and it showed. A lot of their players really off their game mentally. Marnie was a master at the niggle on Saturday night. I think he really took the Sharks to a place they didn't want to go to. They like to play this very clean, very attacking focused style of football, and it didn't become that once the Dogs gave a bit of line pressure and put a little couple of shots on. And I think the Sharks got a little bit scared, and I don't want to say that the Sharks are a scared team, because they're not. They're one of the best teams in the competition. But if you're going to win games at the highest level, you need to be able to beat an understrength Dogs team. And credit to the Dogs, they did very well. But the Sharks really let down themselves for me. And for the Raiders side of things, I really didn't back them last week. I had them losing to the Cowboys anyway. And it's been a real fall off from their early season form, from what we saw in Vegas to what we're seeing now. they just looked like they couldn't even go with the Cowboys the other night. The Cowboys were running roughshod all over them. They were running up the middle. I think the ref actually kept them in the game quite a fair bit. To give away 3 6 agains that made no sense. And then, yes, Cohen Hess was offside and he did deserve to go to the sin bin on the back of those 6 agains. I just feel like Ricky had a little bit of a whinge and he got his way, but the scoreboard told everything. Yeah, and Cliffo had a great game. I can't take that away from Jake Clifford. He was outstanding, and the Raiders really didn't have an answer for him. As far as the tip goes for this game, I'm going to back the Sharks. I do think that they'll go down to Canberra and get a win here. The Raiders seem to be reeling at the moment, bit of ill discipline costing them in the likes of Corey Horsburgh. It's not looking phenomenal right now. And I think this Sharks forward pack is definitely a forward pack that can take it to this big Raiders forward pack. But they are at home, so you've got to take that into account. But I'm going to go the Sharks, 1-12. First Friday night game of the round takes place out at Penrith, where the Panthers will be taking on the Cowboys. Now, the Panthers, let's talk about them first of all. They had not lost a game for 2,035 days. That's 3 games in a row. It has taken them 6 seasons to lose 3 games in a row. Is the dynasty over? That is my question. They are losing a lot of troops at the moment. They look very under strength. A lot of the guys that they're bringing in aren't really playing up to the same standard that we are used to seeing from this team. And there is possibility that a couple of teams have figured out their defensive structure and they are putting on points against this Panthers team. I don't know if they can stop it at the moment. I think they have a good chance this week. They are going in against a Cowboys team that I don't consider to be a top 8 team. But the Cowboys, I will take some positives out of last week's game. They were phenomenal from my point of view. I thought they hung in the fight. We did really well with Cohen Hess off the field. I thought the refereeing was dead set bullshit, in my opinion, at times, and really kept Canberra in the game. We were going to run away with that. Canberra really didn't have anything left. They were struggling on the fitness point of view, and we took the cold team up to North Queensland. And I think that's something that you have to do. You have to take the team that's not used to playing in those conditions, and you've got to beat them on your own turf. And the Cowboys definitely did that. And Jake Clifford, look, I've been so against Jake Clifford. Don't get that wrong. But he has these games every now and again where you think, man, he could really be the long-term solution for us at halfback. And then the next week, he goes back to being terrible. I don't know how I feel about Jake Clifford right now. I'm going to leave a little pass mark there for him at the moment. We'll return to it a bit later in the story. But for this tip, guys, I do expect Penrith to bounce back. They are at home. We don't love going down to Penrith and beating them on their home turf. And I just think this Panthers team are due a response, especially with Nathan Cleary coming back into the team. Panthers 13 plus. The Friday night blockbuster special is the South Sydney Rabbitohs taking on the old enemy, the Sydney Roosters. And what a game this always is each and every year. And you would expect it to be a little bit closer in recent times, but the Sydney Roosters go into this game having won the last 4 straight against the Rabbitohs. Although I would say this year, this is a very different Rabbitohs team. They are down on troops right now, but they seem to find a way to get victories. They did it in rounds 1 and 2. They had a little bit of a lax round 3. And then last week, they put on a clinic against the Panthers, the 4-time defending premiers. They shut them out in the first half. 28-0 it was at one point, and they are due to get Latrell Mitchell back this week. What a huge in that is. And on the Roosters side of things, they're struggling right now. The Titans lost the other night. I was watching it thinking, wow, the Roosters are the better team here. They have more ball. They are making line break after line break after line break, and they just couldn't ice any opportunities. Sandon Smith, wow, I bet you he wishes he had that pass back, just giving it to Jaden Campbell for him to run a clean 90 metres and score a great intercept try. And they go into this one not looking that great, to tell you the truth. I find these games are always fun to watch, but they're not necessarily sometimes the best representation of what we want rugby league to be. There's always a bit of fire. There's always a bit of jarring back and forth. And I think for the Roosters, they don't have the troops right now. But you could say that about the Rabbitohs. And this is a head scratcher, man. It really is tearing me either way. And I feel like with Latrell Mitchell coming back, he has such a statement to make. But to have him come back for this game against his former club, and we know sometimes he can do some very stupid things, it's a bit of a risk for me to go with South Sydney. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go with South Sydney, and I nothing to take away from the Roosters team, their history, their legacy. They are a phenomenal club, but they are not the team of 2018, 2019, even the team that we've seen make the finals the last couple of years. There's a lot of rookies in there. There's a lot of inexperience, and I think they could find themselves up against it against a pretty strong South Sydney team at the moment. Souths 1-12. Our first game on Saturday is out at CommBank, where we have the Eels taking on the Dragons. Now, the Eels, they didn't win many games last year, but they did beat the Dragons at home, and they have also won the last 3 straight. And if you remember last year's game, it was an extremely high-scoring game, 44-40. The Eels won this game. They had it won, and with about 10 minutes to go, the Dragons nearly came back and stole the game. And I'm wondering whether is this Eels team that Moses reliant that they cannot get anything going without him in the team. I just it baffles belief to me that they've become this team that relies so heavily on Moses being there that when he's not there, they go completely mad. Like they're running around with like chickens with their heads cut off. It's embarrassing. Like the first half again against Manly, yes, they're only down 12-0, but it's just like, are they going to produce anything that makes me believe in them right now? And I feel like the Dragons are also one of those teams where you just like, they could turn up and they could beat Melbourne, or they could turn up and lose to the Eels. Again, like the game before this one, it's another head scratcher, and I'm just no idea where to go with this one. Like it's so difficult, but I think the Dragons will go to CommBank and get a victory, and that's not because they haven't won their last 3 games at CommBank, but I just think this Parramatta team right now are just not in any position whatsoever to be even considering winning games right now. Their structure is all over the place. Their attacking plays go nowhere. And I just think the Dragons have a little bit more grit, a little bit more experience on their side. And Gutho will definitely be up for this game considering they shafted him off at the end of last season. Let's go the Dragons, but I think they'll make it close. 1-12. And for our next game on Saturday, it is another 50-50 clash between the Dolphins and the Titans. Yes, I do think this game is a very 50-50 game. The Titans against the Roosters last week, they probably should have lost that game. When you look at it from an outside perspective, you'll just notice that the Roosters really didn't ice any opportunities. And the Titans, yes, they ended up running away with it in the end, but I really thought their defense, especially around the middle of the field, was quite poor. And the Dolphins, man, they're better than this. They're better than being the team that hasn't won a game. They're sitting right down the bottom of the ladder right now with the Eels, and there's no way that they ever thought that they'd be in this position. But they come into this matchup with the Titans, having won 3 out of their 4 games against them, and it is a team that they do know quite well. Yes, it's another Queensland derby, but it's the Battle of South Queensland. We've got the Gold Coast, we have Redcliffe, and I just think that the Dolphins will finally get off the hump. They've just been shooting themselves in the foot left, right, and centre to start this season. It's not been ideal, put it that way. I think the move to put Herbie over to the left side has worked in a way, but Averillo got really torn up on the right last week. Not exactly sure if he is the best option that they have. And this forward pack is just so light. Like it's Kafusi playing prop. Like, whose idea was that? And then I think that the Titans they love this risque type of football where they just throw offloads willy nilly. They can tend to make a lot of mistakes. They aren't the best tackling team in the competition. They do give away a lot of missed tackles, and no doubt they did that the other night. But the one thing that I don't think happened is that the Roosters didn't make them pay for it. I somehow think that the Dolphins will make them pay for it, especially being as hungry that they are, that they have not won a game this season. And hunger can definitely do some things to you. Let's go the Dolphins in this one, 1 to 12. The last game on Super Saturday is the Broncos taking on the Tigers up at Suncorp. And let's go to the Broncos first. I thought that they did what they needed to do in last week's game. They didn't really have to do anything too special to beat the Dolphins. Yes, their defense was quite good, and I thought Katoni Staggs had a great game coming back from injury. But Reece Walsh, once again, was quite wasteful with his opportunities. And then also, he did not click, or is not clicking, with his current halves pairing. And if it wasn't for having the wealth of experience that they do have in that halves pairing, then I think the game could have been very different for them. And I'm not exactly sure what's happening with Reece right now, because he came out 2023. He was almost, I would say, Dally M Player of the Year. He was outstanding. And what's happened now is that everyone's kind of started to realize that the mistakes that were genuinely always a part of his game are still there. And he's not really learning from them each and every week. And that is the biggest bugbear for me with putting Brisbane into that top four conversation. Because when Reece Walsh is clicking, and no doubt he has games where he can be absolutely electric, it's just not happening right now for some reason. Anyway, that's just my thought on Brisbane. But for the Tigers, for once, they showed some grit. They actually got down and dirty in a game and made it very close with the Warriors. But there's one thing that I have said about the Tigers: the 2 wins that they have accumulated this season have come against the 2 teams that have not won a game this year. And there's one thing I want to highlight from last week's game. Jerome Luai, 4 runs, 14 metres. Yes, he kicked a lot, 363 kick meters, as a matter of fact, but I'm not sure that the Tigers signed him for his kicking ability. That's just my opinion. Anyway, I'm going to back the Broncos in this game. I think that the Tigers, once they come up against teams that are a little bit more, shall we say, prominent, a little bit more of a premiership threat, they tend to struggle a little bit more. I don't think the Warriors are one of those teams, and yeah, it got away from them in the end. But there is hope there for the Tigers. But I just think that this Broncos team should not lose this game. Let's go Broncos, 13 plus. The first game of NRL Sunday for round 5 is the Seagulls taking on the Melbourne Storm in the Battle of Brookvale, one of the most storied rivalries in the NRL. And coming into this game, the Storm are off a loss, and they also have not beaten the Seagulls at Four Pines Park since 2021. Really interesting game for the Storm last week. They seemed to lose their way a little bit with Jerome Hughes out of the side. Munster was forced to inject himself quite a lot more. I don't know what's seems to be Munster's problem. He's only 30 years old, but it almost seems like he's lost it a little bit over the last couple of seasons. I think being injury prone doesn't help. He's had a couple of disruptions over the years, and Wishart also got targeted last week as well. That dummy and run really isn't working for him at this stage of his career. Yes, it was a bit of a surprise to some other teams last year, but I just think that he needs to maybe let the ball go, let it sing a little bit more. It's one of those things that if he doesn't adapt, then he's going to be left on the doorstep. And yeah, that might be a bit harsh, but I think Wishart is a good player. But yeah, I do think that he needs to adapt in order for them to be successful, especially with Hughes being out of the team. He does so much for them. The Seagulls, I don't really need to touch on them too much. They did lose Turbo again, and that will factor into my tipping once again for this Battle of Brookvale. I love the fact that the fans gave DCE a nice entrance onto the ground. I think that the club has really let him down. I think the front office has let him down, but the fans still love him, and as they should. He is an absolute legend of the club. But I'm going to back the Storm to get a win at Four Pines Park this week. I don't know if they're going to be the favourites going into the game. I don't think they should be, but with Turbo out, that could definitely make them favourites. I just don't love Manly without Turbo, although they did put it on Parramatta on the weekend, and Parramatta. But yeah, let's go with the Storm in this game. I think they get it done, 1-12. The last game of the round has us out at a core stadium, the NRL's White Elephant, where we have the Dogs taking on the Newcastle Knights, who are fresh off the bye for this round. And I've got to say, first, for this Dog side, man, they've been impressive over the first month of football to win 2 games with arguably their best player and their best second rower out of the team. Some guys have really stepped up. Bailey Hayward has been outstanding. I reckon Preston at this point in time could potentially sneak into a Blues jersey. If he isn't going to be playing, he's definitely got to be in and around the squad because he is one for the future. There's so many good second rowers going around for the New South Wales Blues right now. It is going to be a nightmare to pick for Laurie Daly. And the Dogs, man, they drag you into playing their type of football. They get the game that they want. And I'm wondering whether the Knights are going to be able to stop that from happening. I really didn't like what I saw from them in their last game out. Yes, they've had a week off to maybe work on a few things, but how much worse can it get when you're playing arguably the best team in the competition over the first month of football? I don't know what Ponga's answer to that is going to be. Yes, I talk about Ponga because it is just going to be Kalen Ponga. This Knights side, well, it's Ponga and Best. This Knights side, I don't see them winning this game, to tell you the truth. I just think Canterbury's defence is going to be a little too strong, a little too in your face for the Knights, and Ponga's not going to have much room to move, and he needs room to move to be effective. So we're going to go with the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs to get a win, 13 plus. So, guys, that is it for my tips and predictions for round 5. Let me know your tips down in the comments section below. Please make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel and download the TBC Live app in the description below. And I'll catch you on the next one.